appropriate to me. So yeah, I'm Scott Parsons. I'm director of the Fellowship and Applied Studies program at HB, and I'll just quickly introduce our guests so we can get underway and talk. First is Alli Tuffuor, class of 2002, is an attorney and specifically lead counsel of a business unit at Toast, a Boston-based software and technology company. And we have Maggie Bell Guinivan, class of 2006. She has been an associate director of marketing at Wayfair since June of 2019. And in this role, she develops marketing strategy and tactics for Wayfair's emerging businesses in furniture and home decor. And Laura McCreary Tuttle, class of 1993, has had a 20-plus year career in the finance and investment industry, including investor relations, investment banking, private equity, and for the past 15 years, investment and wealth management. Over the past year, Laura has taken a break from work and is exploring exciting new opportunities for the next chapter of her career. So thank you all. Just first of all, thank you for being here. I think all of us are more hungry than ever for community. And the thing I hear most from students is that they really look for opportunities just like this to be together, even if it's on a screen, and have conversation. So to get us started, I thought each of you could if you could tell us about the path you've taken since graduating from HB to what you're doing now. We're always curious like how linear or usually non-linear those paths are and how you've ended up where you are right now. And I just throw it to, I see Alli at the top of my screen, so if you want to kick it off and tell us your story.
Sure. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. So let's see, since graduating from HB, which is now crazy for me to say, almost 20 years ago, and I really think of my HB days as yesterday. I've lived in about, I think, 7 different cities. Unfortunately, I've never made it far enough south or west to say that I've lived in a warm climate. Right now, I'm in Boston, of course. But my family's relocating to Chicago next month for an opportunity that my husband is going to be working on. And luckily, I have the opportunity to transfer with my current job, Toast, as well. So right after leaving HB, I started at Vanderbilt. And I was only there for a year. I realized pretty quickly it was not the right place for me. Growing up in Cleveland, I hadn't lived in the South before. And as I thought about it, I realized like HB was really progressive and rather progressive. And for me, Vanderbilt felt really, really conservative. So, I would call my parents and I had friends and I had a network. And actually at the time, there was a lot of HB women who were enrolled at Vanderbilt. So my same year and then also years above us as well. So there was certainly a network, but it just didn't seem like the right place for me. So I quickly transferred second year to George Washington in Washington, D.C. And I loved DC. It was a really like fun, energetic city for me. And I felt like I fit right in. And I come from a family of healthcare providers. So I always thought that my interest and my focus was going to be in medicine. And it certainly was not. I was drawn to, well, I'll be honest with this crowd. I took organic chemistry and that quickly changed my path. I think it was probably the worst grade that I got ever in school. And I was also just more drawn to a lot of the other classes. Like I was drawn to sociology classes and criminal justice classes and poli-sci classes. So that's what I did. I pursued a undergraduate degree in sociology with a minor in public health because I always still had an interest in the healthcare and also a minor in international affairs. And one of the things I really value and appreciated about DC is internships, right? Like everyone did internships and that was just the thing to do. You had one every semester, a different one every semester. And that is really what gave me the exposure to kind of just see what's out there. Some of them were terrible. Some of them were really fun and exciting. And like one of my favorite ones that I always think about is I worked at a halfway house in at the time was not a very great area of DC. It's since turned over. But my parents were like, what are you doing? You cannot work at a halfway house. And these were individuals, men, who had been incarcerated. One gentleman I spoke to, he had been incarcerated for murdering someone and he had been in jail for 20 plus years. And he was now in a halfway house integrating back into society. And part of my role was to sit down with him with a map, in the center and like show him how to use the metro system and the bus system that had totally changed since he had been incarcerated. So DC really like opened my eyes, and GW and all my different internships really opened my eyes to just so many different areas that I didn't even know existed, and so many different people I didn't know existed. And I love just like the diversity of the city, of the school, of my friends. I really, frankly, as progressive as I perceived HB and Cleveland to be at the time, I didn't realize that there was so much more. And so that was really great and exciting for me. And that's where I really developed an interest and a passion for law. So after I graduated, I worked for a short period of time for a solo practitioner while I applied to law school. I'm sure you hear my twins screaming in the background, so thanks for bearing with me there. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear them, and I'll, okay, all right, so it's true, you can. So I developed an interest for law, and I applied to law school, and I came back to Ohio, went to Ohio State, and knew I kind of wanted to once again live in another city, and ended up, getting a summer internship in Chicago. That took me to Chicago, where I got different exposure to different areas of law, but really fell in love with employment law. I kind of thought back in the back of my head that I was always going to do criminal law, but the opportunity presented itself to kind of go to a big firm, and I figured, why not? Let's try it out. If it doesn't work out, I can always, do something else. But I, yeah, explored a few different areas and ended up in employment law. And I love it. I absolutely love it. And I did that at a big firm for about 6 years, and frankly, just got burnt out. It was a lot of work, a lot of hours. Met a lot of really great people and really engaging, interesting work, and developed a really good skill set. But I was tired, and I knew that at some point I wanted to have a family, and I felt like I was just working too long to really be able to commit the time and energy that I wanted to my family, right? That I would hopefully soon have. And so I started making the decision, what am I going to do? Because I like practicing, but I know there's alternatives where I don't have to quite be, this engaged all the time. So I started exploring opportunities to go in-house. And that's what took me to Clark's Footwear. Some point in there, I moved from Chicago to Boston, and whatever. But I started exploring opportunities to go in-house and ended up at Clark's Footwear. So for a couple of years, I was a footwear lawyer, which was kind of fun. For those of you that know Clark's, maybe not necessarily the most fashionable shoe, but certainly a very practical, good, solid shoe. So that was a really fun opportunity. But, retail is and was, right, it's a hard place to be in, especially now, but even a couple years ago, right, like as all of our big box stores are closing, and people are doing more e-commerce. And I was feeling really, I felt like I wanted to grow a company, and in retail and in footwear, I was shutting down companies, right? We were closing brick and mortar stores a lot. We were severancing people out as we were closing stores, and we were downsizing our corporate offices too. And I was like, I really want to be growing a company. I'm kind of sick of doing all of this, depressing work here, frankly. So I started also looking for companies that I really, really, and this is I think the first time in my career where I was very, very intentional about the type of company I wanted to go to, and not just the type of experience I wanted. But I really made it a priority to say, like, I'm going to work with people that I really, really like, and behind a company and a mission that I really, really can resonate with. And I am really grateful that I put so much time and effort and networking, frankly, into finding the right company. And that's how I ended up at Toast. And for me, Toast is by hands down the best place that I have worked. Leadership is absolutely amazing. And it's in the food industry. So let's be real, like we all love food. We're all self-declared foodies. So that's a win right there. But just the way that food makes you feel, and it makes people feel, like, I think that's probably one of the biggest things that a lot of us are missing, right? Aside from seeing our friends and family on a regular basis, it's just, let's go grab dinner. Let's go grab a coffee. So Toast allows restaurants to be the best that they can be. We provide point of sale software for the restaurant industry. And some restaurants are huge organizations, some are mom and pops, different levels of sophistication, but we help restaurants like optimize to be able to serve their customer the best way that they can. And I'm in the legal department there. I started out as employment counsel, which takes me back to my first role as an attorney. And it's been amazing to help grow a company. And really, we're a young company. So there was no policies. I think we had maybe 2 policies, an anti-harassment policy, and that's it when I started, right? So drafting policies, really making sure our culture is front and center, weighing in on any employee issues, and really like having a pulse and a sense of contribution to, the makeup of the company. And COVID hit shortly thereafter, and we had to do really, what a lot of companies did, where we ended up having to lay off 50% of our workforce. And that was devastating. But I think one thing that, and I had just started a couple months before, but one thing that really stuck with me is when we let people go, people were saying thank you in person and on LinkedIn. Like, thank you for letting me have the opportunity to work for this company. And so I knew right away that I had made the right decision. And because we did it with such grace. And and that's just a reminder to me to just continue to really like think about what matters for you. And I had to think about what mattered for me in my next career. And for me, it was, once again, working for people that are great, for a company whose values and mission I can relate with, and just making sure I'm like surrounded by good people. And that was transparent for me everywhere at Toast, including the general counsel, who's been a huge advocate of me. And then so recently I was just promoted to a new role where now I'm going to be lead counsel of one of our business units. So a payroll and HR arm. So services that we also provide to our customers. And so I'm kind of swimming in new waters as of a few weeks ago, still trying to figure out what's going on. Sometimes faking it. Sometimes I know what I'm doing. But so if there's anyone on the call that might be able to provide some support, you don't have to be an attorney, but if you have any guidance or support, I'm all ears. So yeah, that's my path. So I don't know, I think of it as kind of linear, but a few bumps along the way.
Yeah, thank you. There's some things in there that I want to come back to maybe in a minute, but we'll move on. Can I kick it to you, Maggie, to share?
Sure, but man, that's hard to follow. So I obviously also, after HB, left for college, and I ended up at Dartmouth, just a few hours north of Boston. And I chose Dartmouth because I think I said in front of all of the HB high school my graduating year, I just want to be out of Ohio, which I still remember the head of school's sort of look on his face when I said that so seriously to everyone. Dartmouth for me was sort of an opportunity to meet new people and be really focused in that environment, because it is so contained when it comes to the community aspect of it. You are very much living together. You don't have options outside of the campus except the wilderness, which was a lot of fun, but it's the social experience. You're with that small group throughout the 4 years. And that's what drew me in at the beginning. I was like, these are my people. And as I was thinking about this, that's sort of been the theme as I have made my career choices, my educational choices. When I go around, like, who are the other sort of nerdy, goofy people who I feel like I'm going to get along with? And Dartmouth was the start of those nerdy, goofy people. I went into Dartmouth thinking, I probably want to do something in business, so I should probably major in economics. But then I'll also do something fun on the side because I always enjoyed history. So I'm going to do something fun. Well, I didn't like economics, but I really liked the fun stuff. So I ended up studying history and classics, which was really more history, just more focused. Studied abroad twice. I didn't do the internship thing because I had so much fun living in Greece for 15 weeks instead and studying fine arts. And so when I got to my senior year, I was a bit behind the 8 ball. I didn't know how to write a resume. I still sort of thought I wanted to go to business. So I dropped a very poor resume with any company and I didn't get anything because I had no idea what I was doing. So I graduated without a job and sort of a bit of direction, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. Specifically, I found the HB network actually helped me immediately. My next door neighbor in Cleveland was an HB mom. And so when I went home after graduation and was talking to her, and she had a multi-year business career in banking, and she's like, she gave me some really great advice and just a couple introductions to some younger women who she'd counseled, and sort of got me rolling on a path where I knew, all right, I need to have these conversations. I need to talk to people. I need to learn what companies are looking for, what kind of jobs are out there. I didn't know the difference really between banking and consulting and marketing. What's an analyst versus a sales associate? And so to do some of that education, eventually found my way to a role at a company called Kantar Retail, which is a large sales and marketing conglomerate out of the UK. They had a history of hiring basically just smart people or smart young kids from the Northeast to be analysts. And I said, okay, I can do this. And it was a great group of people, and they were willing to take a chance on someone who was a history major, but who could pass a math test. So I did 3 years at Kantar, sort of building that skill set, learning how to analyze data, how to do client services, what it means to have some of those soft skills and make data-driven recommendations. All of my clients were CPG manufacturers. So I talked about toilet paper and soft drinks day in and day out. It was very accessible. And I spent a lot of time thinking about how grocery stores work. And I figured out pretty quickly, I didn't want to be doing grocery stores for much longer. I also was living outside of New York in Stamford, Connecticut, which at 22, 23, I felt like I was missing the opportunity to live in a big city. That's what my college friends were doing. And I was sort of in suburbia, doing a reverse commute into the heart of Fairfield County, Connecticut. So in order to make that pivot, decided that business school was going to be the right decision for me. Went into that business school application process thinking, again, let's get to a place that's exciting. I ended up going to the University of Chicago for that same reason I chose Dartmouth. These were my nerdy, exciting people who I could get along with, and it just felt right to me. I also knew they did a great job of placing students in management consulting jobs in Chicago. And I'd sort of decided that's what I want to do from day one. So I feel like I learned from my Dartmouth experience of the random walk of a lot of fun to let's go into this next educational experience really targeted. And that's exactly what I did. I spent the first quarter and a half incredibly focused on I'm going to get a top 3 management consulting job. And do whatever it takes from a networking perspective, a resume building perspective, an interview prep. That's all I want to do, which is an interesting way of approaching an academic experience. The classwork was secondary, and it was much more important to do the interview prep than to study for the economics midterm. February of my first year, I get the job, which is awesome. And then I have a year and a half to actually do some learning on the side as sort of the secondary piece of that, which, I felt like it was 2 very different experiences. Studied marketing, finance, and then organizational behavior in business school. Again, finance, because I felt like I needed to, because I was at the University of Chicago and that felt like that was the thing to study. While it was interesting, it wasn't something that I was passionate about, and I found I wasn't very good at it. That I had classmates who were really good and had a really good mindset for analyzing financial statements. That wasn't me, but because of that experience I'd had at Kantar with CPGs and grocery stores, I was really good at data-driven marketing. I understood that. I had some instinct around it, and was able to really excel there and figured this is going to be what I'm going to do at BCG. I'm going to do more of that data-driven marketing. So that's what I did after graduation. I worked for the Boston Consulting Group in Chicago. It is, hearing Alli talk about going to a big law firm and working so hard and those hours and that pressure, that's what management consulting was like for me. Those midnight's a good night. You're on a plane 6 a.m. on Monday morning. You fly back home Thursday night, get home maybe in time for dinner if you're lucky. you learn so much and you get so much great exposure to senior leaders at these interesting companies, and you get exhausted eventually, which if I were to take a step back, I wouldn't trade it for the world. But if I can't imagine, I can't believe I did it for 4 years. I did some of that data marketing that I thought I wanted to do, but I didn't really like the people at BCG who were doing that work. And I found my home in financial services operations. Those were, again, my people. Helping run call centers for Midwestern insurance companies or corporate banking operations. And I don't know how I fell into it, except they were good people. And I found, okay, I can understand this. I can help explain the technical to the business, to my business clients. When after about 3 years in that role, I had met a wonderful boy, and he said to me, hey, I think I would really like for this to work. I got my dream job in Boston. And so I said, oh, maybe. Then he decided, well, what if I married you and then we moved to Boston? Okay, okay, I'll move to Boston if you're really committed to this. So we moved to Boston about 5 months before we got married back in Cleveland. Tried to do the BCG thing from Boston, but my clients were in Omaha, Nebraska, and I just couldn't do it anymore. So I decided I'm going to find that next role. I took about 6 months looking at roles in Boston and trying to combine the things that I'd found I liked, the data-driven marketing piece. I knew I liked technology. I knew I could explain technology and was interested in it. And eventually Wayfair felt like it was the right opportunity, and an opportunity in the marketing organization where I sit in between the very technical marketing operations that is at the core of Wayfair's sort of marketing world. It's less about TV ads. I'm not very creative. I don't do that, but I can explain how our Google search algorithms work to the folks who are running the business and trying to sell sofas. And then translating what's important to the sofas business to the technical folks who are running algorithms to make sure that we're bidding properly with Google on an advertisement. So it's a fun place where I can sit and use both sides of my brain, use the different sort of relationship building skills, the communication. It's been sort of a really nice home for that first corporate role. Since being in that role, I've led sort of a portion of our housewares support, kitchen and cookware sets. Eventually that grew into running our whole the whole marketing or vertical marketing team, which is what we call it, for housewares, and now have moved over to furniture and decor since coming back from maternity leave. That's been sort of that last bit of the journey now, is figuring out, how do I do this and how do I sit in this role now that I have a almost 6-month-old at home, and what's it like to be not just a marketer or someone who works full time, but who also is a working mom.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I want to come back to some things you said before I do also want to thank you for hyping up nerdiness. I appreciate that. That's and then we'll pass it over to Laura to hear from you.
Thanks, Scott. Alli and Maggie, I love your stories. And I think there's definitely some, overlap in how we've pivoted in our careers and been kind of attracted to the more entrepreneurial side. So thanks for sharing. But I'm clearly the oldest of the alums here with, a 25 plus year path. So I'll give the abbreviated version. But I graduated from HB in 1993 from the small but mighty class of 28 girls. And I see Catherine there. Thanks for joining. But left HB with just such an amazing group of friends and terrific experience, really learning leadership skills at an early age. A lot of that, on the field hockey and lacrosse fields. And I know we all share the same, passion for what we got out of HB. But came to Boston, went to Boston College, and conquered a bigger city, a big campus, big sports, and left with, great life experiences, great education, terrific friends, and a job on Wall Street. Now, mind you, it was 1997, a pretty good job market, so don't give me too much credit. And it wasn't like the fancy Wall Street jobs you see on television, but I did actually work on Wall Street. Catherine and I lived together. I did that commute down from the Upper East Side to Wall Street every day. And so I'll kind of talk about my first chapter of my career, which was my 8 years in New York before business school, and then my second chapter, which was in Boston. But I started in investor relations and then went into investment banking, joined a firm at the end of 1999, not the best timing. My banking firm was focused on technology and healthcare, and I joined right before the bubble burst. But so I didn't do too many deals, but I did meet my husband there. So I'd say that was the biggest bonus out of that job. And I also hung on to my job during the bubble bursting, which was not the easiest thing to do. But from there, I joined a terrific firm called Flag Capital. So Maggie, I was doing the commute from New York to Stanford. And this was a firm that was focused on connecting families with private equity funds. So it set up fund of funds for families to get access to private equity. So I was an investment analyst there, doing due diligence on managers. And it was a pretty small firm at that point. So I was one of the first analysts there and really got to help the growth there. And I think that's where I first got some of my entrepreneurial bug. So that was really chapter one. And from there I went to business school at Cornell. And it was a nice little break. It was a little bit of a shock to my system after living in New York for 8 years, but it was nice to take a little pause. And Ithaca, I did learn to love it after I got over the fact that there weren't awesome restaurants there. But great experience there. And from Cornell, I pretty much knew already, I had already worked 8 years and I was pretty focused while I was there and knew I wanted to get a job in investments and wealth management. So I joined a great firm called Cambridge Associates, and some of you on the call might know Cambridge. I see Maggie shaking her head, but for those of you who don't, Cambridge is an investment firm founded in Boston. It was founded about 50 years ago to work primarily with endowments, the leading endowments, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and so forth, to help them build out their portfolios and really institutionalize that. And from there, Cambridge started working with family clients. So my role within Cambridge was as an investment director, working primarily with family clients. And these were pretty big families. So anywhere from an entrepreneur who had maybe sold his or her business to Fortune 500 CEOs to multi-generational families with, billions of dollars. So they would come to Cambridge for us to put their portfolios together. So my role was to, set the asset allocation, put together the portfolio implementation. And this was really to select managers instead of selecting stocks and bonds. It was selecting, what managers they should go into and, what allocation they should be in: equities, fixed income, private equity, real estate, and so forth. So it doesn't sound that exciting, but it actually was a pretty exciting job and gave me such amazing exposure, both on the client side to just some of the best thought leaders in the investment world, and then also on the manager side. So I was there for 12 years, terrific experience. And I'd say one of the highlights, who's walking by right now, two of the biggest highlights during that 12-year period were the birth of our two kids, who are now 10 and 9 years old. I was promoted to managing director. And towards the end of my tenure there, I really followed my passion about bringing together a community of women, which I'd have to say probably started at HB. But I founded a group within Cambridge called Prevail, that brought together a community of women to share ideas and resources. And Prevail is still thriving today. But I think similar to what, Alli and Maggie said, the firm Cambridge had gotten pretty big, and, I wanted to try out something that was growing a little more, where I could be, a thought partner and really lead that growth. And so I shifted to a smaller wealth management firm here in Boston to really be a thought partner to the founders at this firm. And pretty quickly when I joined, I realized there was a big mismatch between what I talked to the founders about what I was going to join to do and what the real need was. And so I was there for 18 months. It, like both of you said, in some of these past, grueling jobs, it was a grind, and it was not the role I should have been doing. So this was probably one of the toughest parts of my career, where I sat down with the founder, I gave him my notice. They were absolutely shocked. So it was like the scariest moment, but also one of the most empowering moments, especially, when they, for weeks, begged me to stay, and I held my ground and said no, just because I knew I would not be happy there. But so that leads me to where I am now. I left there a year ago, really thinking I'm going to take 6 months off, travel to all these great places, not knowing there was a pandemic around the corner. But we can get to this later, I think, in some of the other questions Scott's going to ask. It's been amazing to just be able to take a pause and really think about what I want to do next. Alli, I love the word you mentioned, intentionality, just really be intentional about what I want to do and have it be meaningful. So it's been a busy, year, because I've been, doing the homeschooling and everything that goes with COVID, which everyone's living right now. But tons of networking. I see Ann Kennedy on the call, casting a wide net to the HB alums, but it's been really great exploratory phase. And I'll share some later on the call about some of the things I'm thinking about doing next.
Cool. Well, so that was the next question I wanted to ask, is about like a goal that you might have for the year ahead and how you'll go about it. I wanted to spend a minute and just tell you how much I appreciate your stories, though, and how helpful it is to hear them, because you're all hitting on things that we really lock in on in this fellowships and applied studies program, which is like the importance, so Molly is on the call, and she directs the Center for Business, the fellowship in business and finance, and I do direct the fellowship in writing. And you would think those would be totally different programs, but we have these shared goals, which is to help students become empowered, to help them develop a network and a community. And in these programs, there's tons of passion and energy behind it, but we tend to steer away from using the word passion because it feels like a fixed quality, just like a thing that you're born with or that you just have or you don't. And what we really promote and try to train them in is having just a growth mindset, right? An incremental theory of intelligence versus a fixed one. So I loved hearing, like, even just Alli, when you were saying, you said it, I think 2 or 3 different times, I developed an interest in law. It wasn't just like a thing that you were born to, you discovered that. And even Maggie too, as you said, you spent years on a job building a skill set, right? And that all that is just fascinating. And so it really ties into, you're like living out the things that we're trying to develop in these girls, and it's good for us and good for the students to hear your stories. And so then I'm curious in goals, sometimes it sounds like, even just looking back at your career, sometimes it's been, actually, I want to step down and become help a program build off the ground or become a thought partner, or sometimes it's trying to achieve some more specific, concrete, high aim. So on that, and Laura, you can start us off if you like. What's the year ahead look like for you? What do you?
Yeah, well, I have been ramping up in terms of, putting together the pieces of, what I would say my 3rd chapter will be. And so I think my main goal for 2021 really is focused around my career and what I'm going to do next. And as I said, it's been nice to not feel rushed. And in a way, COVID has allowed me some more time to just be really thoughtful about what I want to do next and do a lot of soul searching. So it started with my putting together a business plan to launch my own firm, my own investment advisory firm, which I have gone out and gotten feedback from many groups on this. And in doing so, have been connected to a couple great RIAs or investment advisors in Boston to possibly partner with them. And the one I'm maybe leaning most closely to is probably the most entrepreneurial, where I would really come in at the beginning and help grow this firm and be a leader there, which is, as I've done the soul searching, I realized, that's a key component of what I'm looking for. And also to have, what I'm doing really be meaningful, invest with purpose and have this make a difference. So stay tuned. Things are moving forward and it's an exciting time. So hopefully next time we all get together, I'll have some news on what chapter 3 is.
Awesome. Dana, you can start making the plan for the reunion. And so go ahead. And then Maggie, do you want to take up that question?
Yeah. So I mentioned I have almost 6-month-old son. And for me, I need to learn how to be a working mom. And I'm thinking about it as being 100% present when I am with my son and during those waking hours when I'm not working, and then 100% present during those dedicated 9-to-5 work hours, and trying to block that off so I can be sort of at my best on both sides. I'm open if I'm other people on this call, Laura, Alli, if you have tips on what else I should be thinking about. That's sort of the first 4 weeks back. That's been the biggest challenge, is to turn my phone off, my email off from 5 to bedtime, or, not hearing him cry right when I hand him off at 9 and thinking what's going on. And I wish I was with him. And, he got sick for the first time this week. And how do I stay focused on what I need to be doing in the moment? Because I haven't had to do that. I used to be able to let things sort of flow into my nighttime, my weekend hours. And now there's too much value there.
Thank you.
I would just add, Maggie, it's just make sure to be easy on yourself. It's not a game of perfect, because there'll be bumps along the road, but I commend you for trying to have that division, because it's not easy.
I echo that. It's definitely not easy. And I'm all ears for the tips. I struggle with it all the time. And especially since even when you're with your children, you want your phone there so you can capture every moment. And part of that too is, do we want to capture every moment by just being present, or on video or picture too, right? Because I often find sometimes I'm like experiencing a moment, but watching it through my phone, which is obviously right here. And then, you get a Slack or a email from work and it's really tempting. So I struggle with it too. And part of it is kind of when you're doing yoga or when you're meditating, right? It's just, all right, it's going to happen. Your mind's going to slip. You're going to gravitate back toward work, and just catch it, be conscious, and then put the phone down and kind of revert back, because work will always be there. We all know that, but it's hard. So I'm still trying to find the balance. I think for me, for a goal for this year, twofold. One is I really want to run a marathon. And I don't want to sign up for a marathon. I kind of want to be able to run it. And I should preface this by saying I'm not a runner at all. And so that's part of the challenge. Is I've always really wanted to be a runner. I just kind of think it's cool. It's healthy. And when I do run, it makes me feel good, right? It's time to just breathe and be in my own head. And for me, it's something I can do with my children too, right? We've got this great running stroller that my grandma found on sale, like open box at Bye Bye Baby in Cleveland, actually. So, like, why not? I want to run it, but I'm not going to sign up. I'm going to do it at my own pace. And I think it'll just be a healthy, like, outdoor exercise for me and my family.
Nice.
And then in addition to that, I'm really exploring the opportunity to join one or more nonprofit boards. it's been something that's been on my mind for a while, and I've been involved in different organizations, just not at the board level, but just as a volunteer or contributing in other ways. And it's just something that I've been interested in. I think it'll be a great way to network and continue to meet people, just learn some new skills too. And I recognize too that like I have a skill that can be really valuable as I talk to more people, that can help, just different organizations who may be struggling. And I think also at the end of the day, who may be struggling or be very successful, frankly. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of just boards and organizations, period, are just looking for like dedicated, and Scott, you mentioned this, like passionate people to help support them and their mission. And so I'm talking to a few different organizations now. And one thing also is I just want to make sure it's an organization that me and my family can support and feel passionate about, right? Like we're going to be contributing our money and our time, right? Time that I'm going to be away from my work, my family. So I just want to make sure that it's something that's worthwhile, and I'm excited.
Nice, thank you. So one more, let's like a two-part question. I just want to ask if you have what advice you would give to the current HB student body, students who are in high school right now or in college. And then to go along with that, I'm just curious, early in your career, but even at this point in your career, if you've had mentors who have been helpful to you. I know I'm always like, I've been teaching for almost 30 years, which is shocking to me. But, when I have my monthly meetings with Fran, I always put half the agenda is just kind of me looking for advice and perspective, because I just like to learn and hear other people's perspective. So if you have advice that you would give for the HB current Blazers and the importance of mentors in your own life. And we'll go ahead. Maggie, we'll let you kick it off this time.
Yeah. You the second question about mentors, you sort of took my fire there on my answer to the first one, but lower the bar for yourself for reaching out to get to know someone. That person that you're reaching out to is going to be so thrilled to hear from you, and flattered that you even asked, and be that HB alum, someone who's a little older than you in school, and just say, can I have 30 minutes to talk to you about what you're working on or what you're studying, how things are going with your sport. People love to talk about themselves. And it just starting to build that relationship and build that muscle, it makes it easier every single time. I find I'm still doing that just at work now with people more senior than me, and also, making sure that I when we were in the office, take the interns out for coffee once a month, helping to lower that bar and have that conversation, because you never know when there's going to be just something really interesting going on, or somebody's working on something that strikes you, or 5 or 6 years down the road, you might run into somebody professionally and they'll help you get a job. That is literally what happened to me at Wayfair. Someone I met at a wedding is now my boss. So you just start building that network. It should be a low bar, and you never know where it's going to lead you. That wasn't a great mentorship answer, Scott. I'll let Alli or Laura take that on, but I think it builds.
And that's really great advice. When we sent out the communication for this event that was happening, a student who graduated in 2016 and is currently in law school reached out to me, and she said, do you think it would be appropriate? Could I reach out to Alli? She's practicing law in the area and I'd love to connect with her, but is it okay if I do that? And I was like, definitely okay to do that, so it is good advice.
We're actually talking next week.
Okay.
And I also plan to tell her about our internship program. We currently have an intern from her school, and we're soon going to be recruiting our next intern as well. So yes, always definitely worth reaching out. And kind of to piggyback off of what Maggie said, and if the person doesn't respond, feel free to reach out again, right? I'm not going to suggest you harass anybody necessarily, but we're all so busy. There's communications coming in from so many different angles, and we lose sight. We look at a text message, and then we get distracted by a kid or an email. So it's not, if someone doesn't respond, it might not be because they don't want to talk to you. It might just be because they forgot. So definitely it's worth two contacts if it's someone that you do want to talk to. But also kind of in the networking discussion that we were talking about, one thing that it took me, I think, a while to realize, and I wish it hadn't taken me quite so long, but I always thought of networking as a really formal process, like going to events or your coworkers, who you correspond with on a regular basis. But I realized that, your network is, to your point, Maggie, someone you met at a wedding. It could be your neighbors. It could be, and it's also not just your friends, but it's your friends' friends. And that to me has just proven really, really powerful. And don't be shy to rely on people. Everyone wants to help someone. So don't be shy, but really just think of your network as really, really creatively. And one thing that I think is really interesting is one of my close girlfriends who actually went to HB, she was single for a while and, decided she no longer wanted to be single. And so she was like, I'm ready to date. And she sent out an email to all of her friends and some of her friends saying, I'm ready to date. So let me know what eligible bachelors you have for me to meet. And she had like options like coming out of everywhere. But I think that's just like the power of networking. And actually she's engaged to one of the gentlemen that she met through kind of this quirky, right? Like who does that? But I mean, that's the power of networking, maybe not in the career sense, but think about it, right? If you're looking for your next career, it's worth a blast email to your network to tell them that you're serious and you're looking for their help and their support. And I guarantee you they will offer it.
Awesome. I'm excited to hear your meeting with Izzy. She's terrific. You'll like her a lot. Should we throw that question to you then, Laura?
Well, the three of us are clearly all on the same page, because I was literally going to say the same thing, Alli, and just don't be shy is my advice. And I feel like it's really easy for me to network now just because I realize that when people come to me, how much I love it and I want to help them. And I have to say, there's not one person in my, close to 30 years out of HB that I've reached out to who has not helped me. So, but I do remember those days when, I was 20 something and really didn't know what I wanted to do and didn't have the right answers to everything, and would go walk into some like huge corporate office and was so scared. But do it because people love to help. And to your question about mentors, I developed some terrific mentors through my networking at an early age who have, stayed mentors throughout my whole career. One is Nancy Anthony, who's an HB alum. She's been terrific. And, it was great having her in Boston. She got me connected into this great investment network in Boston. Another was a woman I didn't even know. I met her, to your point. She was, a colleague of another colleague who had gone to Cornell where I went. And when I was applying, I reached out to her, and we've become, close friends and have helped each other throughout our careers. But she's in private equity and, huge success. And so it does come full circle. And so not only don't be shy, but keep those networks alive. And I think in this day and age, it's easier. I do think that is another thing with COVID, and now everyone's comfortable with Zoom. I mean, you can set up meetings all over the country and make it a lot more personal than what used to be just like an impersonal phone call.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, thank you. I think, Dana, do I need to kick it back to you now?
Yes, so I'm going to unmute everybody and we can take some questions. Let's see, here we go.
Thank you all so much. I loved hearing your stories. I just tell the girls at school, the main thing that keeps me hopeful about the future is just being around these students all day long and knowing they're head out there to make an impact in the world. And it's great to hear how you've already done that.
Awesome. So I just want to say again, thank you everybody for joining us, and our host committee, who I know some of them are on, and if I call your name, you can wave so people see you. So we have Hetty Adler, class of 78. We have Kathleen Floyd Farragudo from '03. I saw Kathleen at some point. There she is. Kate. We have Debbie Marshall Gates. Heather Kelly, there's Debbie, yay. There's Heather Kelly, I see Heather, and then Marianne Lee Betterling, 66. I know Mary, there she is, wonderful. So thank you all for being our host committee in the Boston area. Do we have any questions for our panelists? I know we have some students on, and Molly Christ is our director of the Fellowship for Business and Finance. And Molly, can you tell us why there was a particular interest in having some students in this particular session?
Thanks, Dana. Yeah, I was talking to Dana, and she, we were talking about this event, and I said, well, I have some students that might be interested in hearing stories and talking to these women and hearing kind of their path, so to speak. Yeah, the 4 young ladies that I have invited are running businesses at school, running our Half Cast Cafe, all on their own, right, Chandni and Madeline?
Oh, yeah.
Good and bad, but they've done a fantastic job. So they were very interested in talking to all of you and hearing your stories. And then Ayushi and Lauren also are very interested because they are serving on our investment committee. About 3 years ago, HP generously gifted our new organization with some money to invest, and with the help of Paul Daines, weekly meetings, and a fantastic executive crew with Ayushi, Lauren, and one of our other seniors, Kara Conrad. They've been managing that money with some pretty significant growth. So this was really interesting, an interesting opportunity for our girls. And so I'm super excited that they were able to join us and that you could have us.
Great. Do we have any questions? So I did put in the chat.
Deborah has a question, I believe.
Oh, Deborah, please unmute and please.
Hi, I wanted to ask Alli, it's kind of a nerdy question, but I wanted to ask her what was so fascinating about employment law. The reason I ask is that I have a son who's just migrated from criminal law into employment law. So it's sort of the opposite trajectory. Well, maybe the same trajectory.
I would say they're both very interesting. Thankfully, the stakes are still really important, but a lot lower in employment law than crim law. But employment law, it's fascinating to me, right? Like, you're dealing with people on a regular basis. And like, we know how many different varieties there are of people. And we're trying to just figure out really, like, at the core, what's happening, right? What's wrong? Usually it's some sort of like interpersonal conflict that we're dealing with. And it's really hopefully helping people to be their absolute best in a moment where they're really feeling vulnerable. And I just, frankly, I love that. And that's a really big component of it. And I think separate and apart from that, to be honest, like, part of employment law is really juicy. You get like really good stories. It can be like Jerry Springer at some point. The things that people do at work, we would all be surprised / not really be surprised, right? There's always some interesting stories that are popping up, whether it's people behaving on social media, endless stories. But I think it's just a really interesting interplay of the law and just like human interaction. And then also in particular, employment law, it's ever changing. Like, it is constantly changing. The states are all over the place. There's very little unity. And so it really keeps you on your toes, and it kind of ebbs and flows with like political climates, with economic climates. I can expect, right, with our new administration, it's going to get a lot more employee friendly. And employers are going to have a lot of work to do to kind of keep up and keep their employees happy and keep compliant. So I would guess that some companies that don't have employment counsel now will probably be needing to recruit one in the near future, to be honest.
Thank you. Interesting.
Mira?
First of all, thank you to Alli, Maggie, and Laura for sharing your stories. I'm currently a senior at Babson College in Wellesley, Massachusetts. So your stories really resonated with me as I'm trying to figure out my career path. And actually, I actually have 2 job offers on the table that I have to decide on by Friday. But what really resonated with your stories were the difference between the entrepreneurial growing companies versus those large scale large companies. And actually, that's exactly what I'm deciding between right now. So my question for any or all of you is really just if you were in my shoes and had to start over again, would you go for an entrepreneurial growing company, or what would you say are the pros of a large scale company as well?
I'll take the first stab, and I'll let Laura and Alli say you can't make a bad decision, and your first job is not going to be your last job. So it feels like a huge decision right now, but you'll get another chance at this decision. So that's not the most helpful. I'd say there's the pros of some of the big companies. You're going to have a lot more people to meet. You're going to have more people who you might find a niche in. And so, but with a smaller company, there's going to be a little more flexibility, maybe more opportunities to get more responsibility in that ambiguity. What interests you? Does that ambiguity excite you, or does it scare you? A lot of people, does that excite you, or does that scare you? Start asking yourself those questions, and I think you'll be able to build yourself a decision framework where you're going to be thinking about, what do I like? What's going to interest me? But I'd say you don't have a bad decision. You're in a great spot. Congrats on the offers.
Thank you for sharing.
I'll piggyback off of Maggie briefly. Congrats on your offers and being a senior. And I think Maggie said it so well. I don't have much to add. The only thing is, even if one of those options kind of scares you, that's okay, right? You could even, just because it scares you doesn't mean you have to stray away from it. Maybe that's the direction you do want to go in because you want to flex some new muscles. So once again, that's probably convolutes things even further, but yeah, I think you can't make a wrong choice here. Congrats.
Thank you.
And I'll just add 1 or 2 things, but great job. I mean, this is a tough job environment, so kudos to you. The one thing I would think about is just resume value, and if the corporation has a really big name, that could be a good way to set you up for future opportunities. And on the flip side, the more entrepreneurial job, while it might be more exciting, I would think hard about, these are uncertain times right now. And is that company going to be around in 6 months? How stable is it? Now you're young enough where you can take those risks, but those are just some other things I'd add to the pros and cons list.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all of your insight, and definitely am taking that to heart when I make my decision.
So I saw Lauren, so we'll take one more question from Lauren, and then we want to be respectful of time. And then please remember, I sent the information in the chat. We will send a follow-up email, and we are really, really excited about you're our first virtual event participants. And we want to remind you to, like the lady said, stay in touch with your HB network. Keep in touch, and all of you all who are there in Boston, when you can, when the weather's good and you don't have snow and other things, try and get together. Look at that list of all the folks that are there, and we will help facilitate as much as possible, but we do encourage you to gather together and to take advantage of your network. Lauren, did you have a question you wanted to ask the group?
Yeah, so I am a current sophomore at HB, class of 2023, so I think I'm the youngest person here. And it's been really great to hear all of your individual career paths and life stories, and how you've kind of juggled your many interests. going through your lives. I was wondering, I'm currently interested, I think, in the investment and business side of things in terms of private equity firms and things like that, but also I'm interested in medicine. And I was wondering, in terms of looking for opportunities over the summer or internships that I could go for, how would you suggest kind of balancing those interests to make sure that I'm making the most of my opportunities?
I'm happy to jump in. I mean, first of all, that's a great combo, and that is where the world is going in terms of just the intersection of investments and healthcare, and so it's a great thing to pursue. I would say to think about getting the building blocks first, and this might be a little premature, but as it may be, I don't know if you can get into like investment banking internships at this point, but most people who want to go into private equity, start in investment banking where you learn really just the nuts and bolts of finance and modeling. But I'd be happy to talk offline. I have, contacts in both those industries, and would be happy to put you in touch.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Lauren, I love it. You are learning how to use your HB network, and you still have a few more years of high school. Awesome. Well, thank you.
I was going to say, Lauren, feel free to reach out to me as well. I can put you in touch with my husband, who also used to be in the space, healthcare, investment banking, finance. So reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate everybody taking the time, and thank you so much to our panelists and to Scott Parsons for moderating for us. Remember, there are many ways to connect and network with your HB alum. There's the new alum directory on our website. There's also an alumni group on LinkedIn, and we also have Alumni Fire, which is our private networking platform. Please feel free to reach out to us at the school if you have any questions. Also, Clark Leslie, class of '80, our Director of Advancement, is on. So we're so happy to have Clark back with us. And Catherine Levy is on as the president of our Alumni Association. So wonderful. Look for more information too. We are having our first virtual alumni weekend in May. So there will be many ways for you to connect with HB. Scott, do you want to, any final comments?
I just wanted to say thank you so much. I can't emphasize enough how great it is for the current students to get to hear these stories and make connections like this. It's really terrific.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and enjoy your evening.
Thank you, Dana and Scott.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Take care.
Bye-bye.